The Sig P322 has a pretty decent trigger out of the box, pulling it around 2.5 pounds, and a little bit of over travel, not much at all, but a long reset and a mushy take up. Can it be improved? Let's find out. So Armory Craft sent me the trigger for the P322. It's a dual adjustable trigger. And that was after apparently seeing some of my previous videos. I started out a long time ago, bought the slightly curved trigger for the P365. That was Armory Craft. I put an Armory Craft dual adjustable trigger in my Sig, and also have one in my M17. We'll put links throughout that to at least a couple of those. So obviously I've been using Armory Craft for quite a while. That's all at my own expense, and recently they reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in trying the trigger for the 322. I just happen to have a 322, and I've done a couple of videos on that in the past. And while the trigger is nice in the 322, I have to wonder if it can be improved, particularly with the reset. It's got that long, by the way, it is unloaded here. It has that fairly, well, there's a long take up right there, and then there's a lot of mush, and then it breaks, and almost no over travel, but just a hair. Now you've also got an optional trigger shoe that's curved that comes with the Sig package. I like the straight better. Can this be taken out and the trigger much improved? And we're going to find out. All right, so a word of caution here: make sure that the gun is empty. Now normally I'd recommend disassembling the gun, at least field stripping it, taking the slide off, and you can do that. However, this is a hammer fired gun, and in order to install the new trigger, you've got to have the trigger back, and to test it, you've got to be able to work the trigger to reset. It's a lot easier to do with the upper on. So again, make sure that the gun is completely empty, nothing in it, no magazine, and no ammunition anywhere around you. So we're going to start by pulling the trigger, the old trigger, off. It can be a little bit of a pain to get off, so pull it. I usually do it with a fired position, so I pulled at the bottom, or actually push forward to the bottom, and a little bit of struggle, I can eventually work that factory trigger out of there. And here's where the Armory Craft comes in. It is, I'll be real careful, by the way. The first time I took this out of the package and took the screws out, I lost one. It took me a few minutes searching to finally find it. So there's a pre-travel screw, and these are different screw lengths, so you'll be able to figure out which is which. The pre-travel screw, careful when it comes out, and don't drop it like I just did. So the pre-travel screw comes out, and then through the same hole there is the over-travel screw. You just barely see it there. You want to work that over-travel screw out, and it's really short. Keep it on the end of the supplied Allen wrench and pop that out, all the way out. And you can see it is a very, very tiny screw. Then you've got two screws in the side of the trigger. That's what actually hold the trigger itself to the body of the gun, and those will work out. Again, that's one that I dropped right after I was saying to myself, don't drop the screw. I dropped it and had to search for it. And you can see that's a different length than the pre-travel, certainly a different length than the over-travel screw. So work both of those out, and then it says the directions that come with it do say to make sure you degrease the holes. I've got some denatured alcohol here, and it's really tough getting into the screw holes to degrease it. So with an artist brush, I managed to get some alcohol into the four holes on this, and also very carefully degrease the screws themselves. But again, they're tiny, so it's kind of a challenge to do that. The next step then comes with inserting the over-travel screw. Again, I put that on the end of the wrench, run it in from the front. Be real careful you don't strip or cross thread this. You got to be very sensitive in your feel to make sure that that doesn't cross thread. Do a little experimenting with this, and the experimenting that I did initially in working with this, I started with the screw flush on the back of the trigger, and from there I did one full revolution of the wrench, and that is where it sets in for my over travel. All right, so get it flush, look at where the wrench position is, and run one full revolution. That's where it's going to be. I'm going to back this out and put some Loctite on it because I got a pretty good idea where I need to set them. And I'm using blue Loctite. And again, just a little dab will do you. Kind of like the old Brill Cream commercial, if you're old enough to remember those. Just a little dab will do you. If you aren't old enough to remember those, look it up on YouTube. Not my YouTube channel, but I'm sure somebody's got one somewhere. So just a tiny drop of blue. Alright, that should be about enough. Again, be real careful that you don't cross thread this going in. And run that into where it's flush. And it is flush there. Wrench is pointed straight down. One full revolution is where I am going to stop. Then the pre-travel screw, that's the kind of the mid-length of the 4 screws here. Again, that one is 9.5 turns in. That is, sorry. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.5. And you got a little time before the Loctite sets up on this to work it. All right, so with the trigger back, and again, I've already double checked to make sure that this gun is in fact empty. Now you need the trigger back in order to be able to fit the trigger in, or the Armory Craft trigger in. Slip it all the way up. Now, in holding it in the up position, it can slip down easily. I'm going to test it one more time. Make sure that my over travel, in fact I can probably back that over travel out just a little bit. You got to make sure that the gun will fully cock. Make sure that that's pre-travel. Make sure the over travel stops right there. And it looks like I've got a little bit of room still to set that pre-travel out, because there the hammer has re-engaged. And I got just a little bit of take up, not much. So I'm going to back out my half turn. Now, how critical it is to have Loctite on this. If it's just strictly a range gun, yeah, they're still going to come out. Now, any kind of a defensive gun, you definitely want to make sure you Loctite those, and you also want to leave just a little bit of room for pre-travel and over travel on a defensive gun. On a strictly a range gun, it's not quite as critical, but still, you don't want your gun malfunctioning for you. All right, so there is my release on over travel. All right, excuse me, on pre-travel. I keep saying over travel. Looks like I can still go about another half a turn on that one. Obviously, I didn't count right. All right, so it is in the fired position. Reset. Hold the trigger up. You got to hold it up because it will slip down. And that is right about where I want it. All right, I'm going to put the side screws in without any Loctite initially, just to make sure that I'm where I want to be. Again, these are small. Handle with care, and make sure you don't cross thread. They went from the left side to the right. You can see if you let this slip down a little bit, you can see that there's the interference of the trigger itself right there. So this is the screw's got to fit into that area right there. And if you don't have it all the way up, it's not going to work right. The bottom one goes in with no problem. It does go out the other side. You got to make sure that it's flush on both sides. It's going to fit snug as it's supposed to. So you're going to have to work on that position, but before I get it all the way in, let's make sure that it does function. Alright, so stops right there, don't over travel, and pre-travel, it stops right there. It will reset, and it stops right at the reset. So much better than what the original one was. Now I've just got to run this screw down, and it will be where I want it. Right, so the top screw does fit. It is a snug fit because again, it's working up against the metal part of the Sig trigger. So it is taking some force to get in there. Right, it is flush on both sides. They are in there. So Function check again. Straight up, it's right up against the stop, against the mush. Got just a little bit of mush, no over travel. And it will fully reset. It stops right at the reset. Now, it doesn't lighten the trigger any. I just did a trigger gauge check on it with the same gauge I used on the original trigger. It feels a little lighter, mainly because there's a whole lot less movement. I don't have all that take up. But it still comes out just under 2.5 pounds for the Sig trigger. Right. So there it is, the Armory Craft dual adjustable trigger for the Sig 322. Just gotta be a little careful on the installation, but with no over travel and set for no pre-travel, this is going to be a nice enhancement to an already nice gun. So thanks for dropping in while we take a quick look at the Armory Craft dual adjustable trigger for the Sig 322.